Before starting on any rig, it's always a good idea to double check the scene that we've received just to make sure that everything is in order so we can have a seamless rigging process. And that's what we'll do in this lesson. So once the riggers are handed our asset that we need to create a control system for, we shouldn't just jump right in. We should just go ahead and double check to make sure that everything is in order, making sure that objects that should have been made editable are things like the aircraft's wing. It will be the main objects that we'd want to group and then tie in to, let's say, user data or Expresso or to a control object directly that, again, should be collapsed so that we can have a very easy time rigging that item. This is very critical, especially when we start to work on more complicated rigs where there may be several nodes that we can collapse down, and if that's the case, that should happen, but sometimes we want that history. The hose, this fueling line here, this is questionable because you may want to keep the history it has where the spline still deforms the fueling line geometry, but we're actually going to go ahead and collapse this later on. I'm going to show you another way we can have this rigged, and that's going to be a really fun topic, especially when we build the final animation. So I'm really looking forward to that. So again, once we've double checked our scene, the next thing we can do is just make sure that there are no extra nodes lying around. Nodes that really don't do anything for us, that we don't need to rig at all. And this takes communication between the rigger and the modeler, just to make sure, again, that everything is in order. Now at this point, what I'd like to do is just go in and then create layers so we can quickly show and hide objects to make rigging these assets a little bit easier. For example, when we go ahead and start to rig our fueling line, it might be kind of difficult to get to it and rig it the way it needs to be controlled with these other assets in the way. So what we could always do is go ahead and use layers to kind of hide those objects to just focus on what we need to at the time. So let's say we go ahead and do that. Let's start with our landing platform. Now you see as we start to select it, we're starting to select the objects inside of the landing platform group here. What we could do is middle click on the top group node, and that's going to highlight all child objects, everything underneath this group. So at that point we can go to layers and we can go ahead and create a new layer from our selection. So that's File, New Layer from Object Selection. You can see they're all now tied to that layer. You can see how they're color coded. So now we can go ahead and rename this layer from the Layers Manager. I'll simply call this Landing Pad Layer. Beautiful. So again, we have a very fast way of hiding this object. Now for our fueling line, you can see it's actually tied to our outlet group. So what we do here is go ahead and expand that, and here's the fueling line group. Let's go ahead and middle click to highlight just that asset and all items contained underneath its hierarchy. With it selected, we can go back to File and choose New Layer from Object Selection. We'll go ahead and rename this to Fueling Line Layer. Great. All right, so following that, what we can do is now move to our aircraft. So let's go ahead and highlight its group and create one last layer. I'll simply name this Aircraft Layer. All right, so again, if we need to go to the fueling line, if we're ready to start rigging it, it's just a matter of hiding those other assets, and we can go ahead and just focus on this item. Same thing goes for anything else. Now we're just about finished. I'd like to point out a few really cool new features in Cinema 4D. One is the to-do tag. It's just a way of having artists kind of check off after they're done with their assignment. So we'll find that underneath our tags menu. Let me go ahead and actually select the aircraft group. Head over to tags and I'll separate the menu here. You'll find it under Cinema 4D tags, and here it is, closer to the bottom. I'm not going to go ahead and create it this way because I want to show you how to work with the commander, which is a very fast way of creating these type of tags. So, with our aircraft group highlighted, PV-TOL, what I'll do is press Shift-C, and what you'll see is that now we have this dialog that pops up that asks us to enter the command we'd like to use. So again, we're searching for the to-do tag, so we'll type in to, and you can see here, it's right at the top, so it just filters out all objects according to what we have specified in our field at the top. And now to apply the object, it's just a matter of double-clicking, so you can see now we have the to-do tag tied to our aircraft group. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. It's really straightforward, but again, it's very helpful. So here what we could do is create a note. Let's say that note is rig and animate aircraft ... now. Alright, just having a little bit of fun with this. So now that we have that task, once we're finished, we can go ahead and check it off by simply choosing done. So that's really fun that they've added this kind of checklist system. So, in this lesson again, we have learned how to prepare for rigs. We've learned how to also work with our layers manager just to make things a little bit easier to rig, and we've taken a look at a few new features in Cinema 4D, the to-do tag as well as the commander. I really love that name, but it's just a fast way of creating tags so we can spend more time being more productive and creating really cool control systems. In the next lesson, we're going to go ahead and create a control curve for our aircraft.